Friends, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew EDH. This episode is Ludevic, Necrogenius. This is a pure value deck that focuses on drawing cards, putting a bunch of cards into the graveyard, and eventually winning through a Thassa's Oracle line. With that, let's get into the episode. Now, Ludevic is in Dimir, blue and black, so right off the bat, our ramp is not going to be super great, but everything else should be able to be taken care of. Ludevic costs 1 blue and 1 black for a legendary creature, Human Wizard. He is a 2/3 that reads, whenever Ludevic Necrogenius enters the battlefield or attacks, mill a card. We put the top card of our library directly into our graveyard. He also has an activated ability of X blue, blue, black, black, and exiling X creature cards from our graveyard. We can transform Ludevic. X can't be 0, and we can activate it only as a sorcery. And Ludevic transforms into Olag, Ludevic's Hubris. It's a 4/4 legendary zombie. It's got a paragraph of text on him that reads, as this creature transforms into Olag, it becomes a copy of a creature exiled with it, except its name is Olag. It's a 4/4 and it's legendary blue and black zombie in addition to its other types and colors. Put a number of +1/+1 counters onto Olag equal to the number of creature cards exiled with it. Now, we're not really focused on this side of this card. We are really just focused on the mill aspect and the card draw graveyard shenanigans that you can do with blue and black. So with that, let's get into the first section, which is going to be putting cards into our graveyard and taking advantage of those. With cards like Drownyard Amalgam, which is 4 and a blue for a 3/6 zombie horror. When it enters, we mill 3 cards. You can also pay 3 and make it unblockable. We run Wall of Lost Thoughts, 1 and a blue for a 0/4 wall with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, we can mill ourselves for 4 if we choose ourselves as target player. Now, in other ways, we have Tomb Robber, which is 2 and a black for a 1/1 human pirate with Menace. We can pay 1, discard a card, and it explores, so we can reveal the top card if we put it into our hand if it's a land. Otherwise, we can put a +1/+1 counter on Tomb Robber, put the card back on top, or put it into our graveyard, so some potential advantage there. We also have Auric Lore Mage, 2 black black for a 3/3 human warlock that reads, tap, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. If it's an instant or sorcery card, put a +1/+1 counter on Auric Lore Mage. Now, in terms of taking advantage of the graveyard, we do have Patrician Geist, which is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Spirit Knight with flying. Other spirits you control get +1/+1. We're not worried about the Lord effect. We are worried about the second effect here that reads, spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast, which is kind of important for later on. And for taking advantage of all those spells, we run Secrets of the Dead, 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. Now, with all the cards being put into our graveyard, we have some ways to get them back, depending on what types of cards they are. We have Flood of Recollection, which is a blue-blue for a sorcery. Return target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand and exile it. We have Unearth, which is 1 black for a sorcery. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. We can also cycle it for 2, which is discarding it and drawing a card. And we run Deliver Unto Evil. We do not have a Bolas Planeswalker in the deck, however, so we won't ever get all 4 because all the Boloses are Grixis, and we're only in Dimir, so we're missing the red aspect to be able to play those legally in the format. Now, Deliver Unto Evil is 2 and a black for a sorcery that reads, choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a Bolas Planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Well, we don't, so we're focused on the second half that reads, otherwise, an opponent chooses 2 of them, leave those 2 in your graveyard, and put the other 2 into your hand, and exile Deliver Unto Evil. Now we're going to look at cards we want to put in the graveyard. Cards with Flashback, Jumpstart, and the new Disturb mechanic are the ones we are after in this deck. So we have Secrets of the Key, 1 blue for an instant that reads Investigate. If this spell was cast from the graveyard, investigate twice instead with Flashback for 3 and a blue. Investigate is creating a clue token, which has pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. We have Scour All Possibilities, which is 1 and a blue for sorcery, scry 2, then draw a card with Flashback for 4 and a blue. Mystical Teachings, 3 and a blue for an instant, search your library for an instant card or a card with flash, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, Flashback for 5 and a black. And we have Corpse Cobble, which is a blue and a black for an instant that reads, as an additional cost, to cast this spell, sacrifice any number of creatures. Create an XX blue-black zombie creature token with menace, where X is the total power of the sacrificed creatures, with flashback for 3 blue and a black. Now with cards with Jumpstart, I have Dihada's Ploy, which is 1 blue-black for an instant, draw 2 cards, and discard a card. You gain life equal to the number of cards you have discarded this turn, with a Jumpstart, which is you discard a card and exile it, pay the cost, and you can cast it again, as well as Chemist's Insight. 3 and a blue, instant, draw 2 cards with Jumpstart, same type of deal. Now the cards with Disturb that I am running in this deck after my Innistrad opening are Bait Hook Angler, which is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human peasant with Disturb, 1 and a blue, so we can cast it from our graveyard for the Disturb cost. Covetous Castaway, 1 and a blue for a 1/3. When it dies, we mill 3 cards, Disturb for 3 blue. And Overwhelmed Archivist, 2 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. It's a 3/2. We have Disturb for 3 and a blue. Now, Bait Hook Angler turns from a 2/1 into a 1/2 with flying. If it would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Covetous Castaway disturbs into Ghostly Castigator, 3/4. With flying, when it enters the battlefield, we may shuffle up to 3 target cards from our graveyard into our library. Same kind of deal. If it would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And the Overwhelmed Archivist turns into Archive Haunt. It's a 2/1 with flying, Spirit Wizard. When it attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. If it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it. So that's a lot of fun with the graveyard shenanigans. We also love to draw cards in this deck because we're in blue, and that's kind of something we like to do. So we have the straight up card draw spells. We have Divination, 2 and a blue, draw 2 cards. Jace's Triumph, 2 and a blue, draw 2 cards. If you control a Jace Planeswalker, draw 3 cards instead. Field Research, 2 and a blue with Kicker for 2 and a blue more, so 6 mana total. To kick it, draw 2 cards normally. If it was kicked, draw 3 cards. We have the Scry Then Draw cards with Preordain, 1 blue, Scry 2, then draw a card, and Opt. 1 blue, Scry 1, draw a card. And we have the card draw that requires a little bit more of a price with the price of life, with Blood Pact, 2 and a black for an instant. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life, and Night's Whisper, 1 and a black. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Now, there's a lot of life loss here, and we're going to continue with that theme with a bunch of pay life cards to have some payoffs later on. So we have Argol's Bloodfast, 1 and a black for a legendary enchantment that has 1 and a black, pay 2 life, draw a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 5 or less life, you may transform Argol's Bloodfast, which transforms into Temple of Aklazotz, which taps to add a black or taps sacrifice a creature. You gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Gilt Blade Prowler, which is a 2/3 human pirate for 2 and a black. Pay 1, tap it, pay 1 life, draw a card. Activate this only if you've discarded a card this turn. Speaking of paying life, we have Font of Agonies. It's 1 black for an enchantment. Whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. We can pay 1 and a black, remove 4 blood counters from it, destroy target creature. So we've got some good removal there. We have Mask of Grizzlebrand, 1 and black for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has flying and lifelink. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards, has the equip cost of 3. We have Heirloom Mirror, 1 and a black for an artifact. Pay 1, tap it, pay 1 life, discard a card, draw a card, mill a card, then put a ritual counter on Heirloom Mirror. Then if it has 3 or more counters on it, transform it only as a sorcery. It turns into Inherited Fiend, which is a 4/4 demon with flying. It has 2 and a black, exile target creature from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Inherited Fiend. And with all the paying life and discarding cards and such, we do run the Underworld Cookbook, which is 1 mana for an artifact that says tap, discard a card, create a food token, and we can pay 4, tap it, sacrifice the Underworld Cookbook, return target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. So we do have some brief life gain. We do run a small amount of ramp, well, what I can anyway, with what I have. We have Dark Ritual, Soul Ring, Dimir Signet, and Arcane Signet. We do run a couple of tutors with Demonic Tutor, Mystical Tutor, and Mausoleum Secrets. Because we don't have that many expensive black cards in the deck, Mausoleum Secrets, if you have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 creatures in your graveyard, it's basically a tutor for whatever you want as long as the card is black in identity. It's 1 and a black for an instant with Undergrowth. Search your library for a black card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Now, the win con of this deck is a reanimation style win con. We have a card like Unmarked Grave, which is search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle, and the card has to be non-legendary, which actually plays perfectly into Thassa's Oracle. Blue, if you don't know what it does by now. It's a 1/3. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue, put up to 1 of them on top of your library, the rest on the bottom in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. Now with that, if it's in our graveyard, we do run a copy of Persist. If not, Unearth is also in the deck. As earlier, 1 and a black for a sorcery for Persist. Return target non-legendary card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. The ETB triggers off of Thassa's Oracle, and if our library is empty by the end of the game, or whenever we do it, we win the game. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Homebrew EDH. If you have ideas for future decks you'd like to see me build, go ahead and leave a comment. All feedback is appreciated. The deck list will be in the description with all the cards I didn't include in this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.